We're here in California's southern High Sierra Nevada, and this is what a high-intensity burn scar looks like. This was the Castle Fire of 2020. This is what you would call a high-intensity burn. For me, this fire was a crushing devastation. As you can see, it's a fairly depressing sight. You see just thousands of trees completely blackened with no vegetation on them at all. On this trip, we'll be meeting up with Chad Hansen, who is a fire ecologist and researcher, and we'll be taking a look at a much older fire, the McNally fire that burned in 2002, to see how they're different and how this area might look in the future.
So I'm a forest and fire ecologist, so I'm a boots-on-the-ground guy. I go out into the forest and I gather data actually out into these fire areas. Mostly, I research how forests naturally regenerate after fires. It turns out there's a lot of wildlife species in the forest that have evolved over millions of years to depend specifically on areas where most or all of the trees are killed. They depend on these patches where you have a lot of dead trees.
There are different points of view about what's the best way to manage the forest before a fire and after the fire.
There's a very common belief in the general public that if you have a large fire in the forest, that the forest is destroyed. And what we're finding now is that none of that is true. Where the fire does burn hot and kills most or all the trees, it actually creates some of the most biodiverse habitat, and the forests regenerate wonderfully.
I just wanted to know how I was going to react to how this area looked 25 years after a fire. But I needed somebody with a scientific perspective to backstop my own emotional reactions to it. The last time I was in this part of the McNally fire was in 2005. I've really never been able to get out of my mind the image I saw of these canyon walls just covered with burned out trees with nothing alive. So the hike we're going on, it's a fairly strenuous hike, over 5 miles. Easy part will be going, the hard part will be coming back.
As we get further in and start going down toward Jordan Hot Springs, it's quite a elevation descent. And so that means it's a big hike back up. So that'll be the main challenge, is just the elevation gain on the way back.
So we'll see how I do. On our hike down 9 Mile Creek, we walked by several small areas that had high-intensity burn scars that after more than 20 years appeared to be recovering quite well, unlike the areas we saw earlier in the day on the Castle Fire that had been logged after the fire.
If this area was not a protected area, and if this was post-fire logged, you would see nothing but stumps. You wouldn't see any down logs or standing snags, all this stuff that's so important for wildlife. But you would also see a lot of damage to the soil from the logging machinery, which typically kills most of the natural conifer regeneration. So natural regeneration is best.
Unfortunately, we didn't make it all the way to Jordan Hot Springs, but we did make it just down the trail a bit to this high-intensity burn that I remember from 20 years ago, where both sides of the hill were just completely denuded of vegetation and were just full of black sticks.
These are the 2 largest high-intensity fire patches. So yeah, I mean, you can see the Jeffrey pines are coming in great here. That's all post-fire growth. You will not find any area of any significant spatial scale that doesn't have conifer regeneration. I can tell you there's at least 6 that I'm seeing that are you couldn't see from below, from where I'm standing. 2 more over there.
Yeah.
The white fir down there. And we got that one, yeah. Most of what's here you cannot see until you hike into it. And I would say almost certainly there's even more that is below the level of the shrub cover. That's the message from these areas, is that it's all regenerating. It's regenerating in heterogeneous, diverse, variable ways, just the way nature intended.
When I got there, I was hoping to see a reborn forest, but that's not what we saw. Aesthetically, it was a huge disappointment, but because of Chad's analysis, I was able to see it in a different way. The forest was in some kind of a phase of a regrowth that's measured in centuries, not on a human scale of decades. We're now experiencing the challenging part of the hike, which is climbing back to the trailhead above us. The McNally fire was different than the Castle fire. We didn't see these vast areas that were just completely wiped out. So I think it may be that the recovery of the Castle Fire will be much harder. I think Chad is optimistic, and he made me optimistic, but I think he's still more optimistic than I am.
In a forest ecosystem, when a tree dies, in many ways, in most ways, its life in that forest ecosystem is just beginning. It decays over the course of many, many decades and provides homes to small mammals, to invertebrates and reptiles. And then it decays into soil and basically fertilizes the forest ecosystem and helps spur the growth of the next generation of trees. A dead tree in a forest ecosystem, it's actually the most important thing ecologically in the forest. It gives me hope.